You're listening to Farang Stories, Hungry Nights in Pattaya. Episode 2, The Rescue and the Mission. Morning in Pattaya does not arrive, it seeps in. The sky pales behind the buildings. Scooters begin to sound like insects with opinions. The heat loosens its shoulders for the day's work. Ning carried the takeaway bag up the concrete stairs to her room, the smell of somtam bala staying ahead of her like a promise. Her mother was awake on the thin mat, turned on her side with one arm curved around the baby. The little girl stirred on the lower mattress, blinked, and sat up with hair like black grass. Ning put the food on the table, as if putting calm on a shelf. Sticky rice for her mother to nibble while pretending not to. A spoon of sauce folded into rice for the girl. A taste of cool water for the baby. Life could be made orderly for a quarter of an hour. Sometimes a quarter of an hour is a kingdom. While they ate, the room found its rhythm. The fan tapped at a loose wire. A neighbor's radio tried a ballad and failed to find the key. A kettle on another floor boiled and shut itself off with a proud click. Ning told a story about a gecko that could sing if you asked politely. Her daughter believed her with the generosity only children possess. The baby's fists opened and closed like sea flowers under warm water. After breakfast, quiet arrived like a visitor who did not know where to sit. The city moved forward. Ning's thoughts slowed. She watched the light climb the wall and stopped it for a second with her hand. A child's game she played with herself when she needed time to obey. When the line reached a crack where plaster had given up pretending to be strong, she stood. Sleep came as a shallow tide and went away in the same manner. The day arranged itself into errands. Milk first. A promise to the pharmacist kept with exact coins. A nod to the woman who always remembered the baby's name and asked for it again, as if tasting it. Rice from the shop that kept a small bin of broken grains for families who understood value. A short, warm conversation with the landlady in her soft scarf, who agreed that rent could be late for one more week. Grace written in the tilt of a head. Ning's smile held. Gratitude made it honest. By afternoon she had straightened the room, washed the cups, counted the money twice as if sums might behave differently if treated with respect. She laid out a dress that made her look like someone the world might listen to. She folded a second one on top in case a change could change the night. Then the children woke again, and the day began its second movement. When she left for work, the sun had turned the street to metal. She parked in a sliver of shade. She crossed the threshold of the gentleman's club with shoulders set for patience. The Farang boss gave her the practiced smile he had for women who made the place look civilized. The first table began, the second, time learning to count backwards and forwards at once. She managed conversation. She let laughter sit where it needed to. She said no with the softness that saves dignity for both sides. Her feet hurt. Her face did not show it. Between tables, her mind took the old path home, then further back, past the room and its small privileges, past Pattaya, to the memory of a different morning. A faraway door, an old woman's eyes, the smell of soap. Once, long before the club and the baby and the night's steady work, there had been a moment when Ning's life changed direction without giving notice. The slum had been itself that day. Heat pressed low, flies in debate, dogs sleeping as if sleep were a profession. Ning had been 8. Her skin had been an argument with itself, raw in places and silver in others. Her mother had stood at the entrance of their lean-to with a face that had forgotten how to be young. 2 visitors had come. They were foreigners, old enough to have grown grandchildren, hands soft with a kind of strength that does not need to be loud. The woman's name was Kate, the man's name was Bill. Their tie was kind and imperfect, their smiles had grammar. They carried water and powdered milk and clothes that had belonged to slightly bigger children. They sat on upside-down buckets and listened as if listening could be a cure. It was Kate who noticed Ning's skin, who crouched without hurry and asked with her eyes before asking with words. She spoke to Dao with a gentle precision, the way a person speaks when they are about to ask for something that cannot be demanded. She explained that ointment would help, but not enough, that the first medicine would be cleanliness and rest, that the second would be food that did not have to be argued with. She asked, very carefully, if Ning might come and stay for a while in a place where these things were ordinary. Dao listened with her mouth pressed thin. Ning stood very still. Stillness can be a bargain. For a long minute, the room contained a future and the possibility of declining it. Then Dao nodded once. She did not say yes. She allowed it to be true. Kate reached out her hand and touched Dao's arm with a mother's gratitude. The line between them altered. They took Ning first to their own flat. Not the mission yet. A quieter place with curtains that were clean and a table that had been wiped that morning. Kate ran a bath with water that steamed a little. A luxury Ning watched like a story unfolding. She sat slowly. She shut her eyes as the heat took the cold from her bones. When she opened them again, the world was the same size, but it felt kinder. Bill made tea and did it badly. He brought biscuits and did that perfectly. He spoke almost no Thai. He placed respect in the space where words would have been. A doctor visited the next day. He peered and hummed and wrote the names of things on a pad. Creams and tablets arrived. Time and sleep did their share. Ning's skin began to decide it was part of her again. She learned, awkwardly at first, the lightness of being clean. Within a week, she moved to the Street Kids Mission, a low building with a bright gate and a mural of flowers that had been painted by children who knew how sunshine should look. The mornings were orderly, the afternoons were allowed to be noisy, the nights were quiet in that particular way that means safety rather than fear. There were other children, some loud with the relief of attention, some small with unshed sound, all carefully given names back when the world had tried to take them away. Ning slept on a simple bed with a sheet that smelled of soap. She woke to breakfast that did not have to be negotiated. School began at the Wat down the road. At first, she copied shapes that looked like fences and birds. Then the shapes grew into letters that became words she could carry in her pocket. An old monk, with a voice that creaked like a door, taught her to read slowly and to speak gently when she did not understand. On Saturdays, a group of volunteers arrived with messy joy and a whiteboard. They taught English words that felt round in the mouth. Hello, please, thank you, blue, story. Ning learned to say her name with a small space before and after it, as if the sound itself deserved room. In the afternoons, work appeared disguised as play. A boy showed her how to fold a lotus from paper and make it stand. A girl taught her to skip with a rope that had once been a washing line. Bill taught her to hold a hammer by its balance rather than its weight. Kate taught her many things without declaring them lessons. That a table laid with care can teach a child to sit straighter. That fairness is not a theory but a habit. That being seen is often more powerful than being saved. Sometimes Dao came to visit. She would sit on a chair as if the chair might change its mind. She would speak in a rush and then stop altogether. Kate made tea, which Dao accepted as if it were a contract. They spoke about food and weather and the cleverness of the baby 2 rooms over, not about the sadness that had been parceled and stored. When she left, Dao always took a bag of rice, sometimes a small packet of dried fish, once a second-hand shirt that Ning had secretly begged for because it looked warm. For almost 3 years, the mission held Ning like a dock holds a boat, tied but pointed towards open water. Her skin healed. Her shoulders unlearned the habit of hunching. Her laugh found its true pitch. She grew taller in that sudden way children do when the body is finally allowed to trust the future. She learned enough English to say, without shyness, that she was good at reading and could count quickly. She sang a song under her breath when she swept the courtyard. She sang it because singing felt like walking without the ground. Then one morning, Dao arrived with a face that had decided something. She came into Kate's office with hands folded like a person in prayer. She said she missed her daughter. She said she needed Ning at home to help with work. She said it would only be for a while. Kate listened. She did not argue. She explained gently that the mission could not refuse a parent who asked. She asked for one night to prepare Ning. The news fell through Ning like a stone into clear water. She nodded because she did not know what else to do. She folded her clothes into a bag as if folding calm into fabric. She laid her hand on the sheet for a second longer than a person would consider usual. The sheet did not answer back. She ate dinner with her friends and told them nothing because saying a thing makes it more true. She slept with her eyes open for a long time and then fell into a dream that tried to look after her and did not entirely succeed. They went back to the slum the next day. It had not changed. Perhaps it had, and it was Ning who had changed. The air felt closer, the ground more stubborn, the smell sharper by half. Dao tried to be light and failed halfway. She patted Ning's shoulder and called her clever. She put the bag under the bed and said they would celebrate that night with noodles if fortune smiled. Ning swept the floor and found no end to the dust. The man arrived in the evening, a car that knew how to arrive without apology, a shirt that had never been patched. He spoke to Dao in a tone that sounded reasonable if you did not listen to the words. Dao listened with fear, sitting just behind her eyes. He looked at Ning and smiled in the way a person might smile at a piece of furniture they planned to bargain for. He said there would be money, not much, but enough to settle one thing and delay another. He said he knew a Farang who would be kind. Kind was the word people use when the truth cannot be said aloud. Ning felt the air thin. She considered running. The door was there. The path was clear for 2 seconds, and then not. The man's hand fell light on her wrist. Lightness can be another kind of weight. He walked her to the car and opened the door with a flourish he might have used for a guest. Dao stood in the doorway with her mouth open, as if a word had left and forgotten to come back. Ning Saturday. The door closed with the soft certainty that belongs to doors that have practiced. What followed can be told in bare shapes. A flat far from the ground. A lock that sat outside on its nail like a small, square threat. Days organized by someone else's appetite. Nights that turned into mornings by endurance. She cooked to stay useful. She cleaned to stay sane. She counted tiles when counting helped. She learned where the light fell at 4 in the afternoon. She watched a square of sky move across a window. She kept a line of days in her head so that time remained a road and not a room. Sometimes she stood at the sink and imagined the mission's courtyard. Imagined Kate's hand on her shoulder. Imagined the taste of tea with too much milk. People survive by building houses in their minds. When rescue came, it was noisy. Not heroic noise, but municipal. Raised voices in the corridor. Boots on stairs. A key that did not fit, then a bar that did. The door gave up its job. Men in uniforms who looked tired because tired is honest. Ning lifted her hands without being asked. Officers glanced at her. One of them nodded in the way that says the world may still make sense. They took her to the police station and sat her in a chair with metal feet that scraped. Questions were asked in the wrong order, and then again in a better one. A camera flashed, a paper was pushed, a name was written down very carefully. Somewhere else, someone dealt with the man who had decided things on her behalf. That story belongs in a different book. In a small miracle that felt like a planned coincidence, Kate saw a newspaper photograph the next morning and recognized a child she had watched grow. She went straight to Dao. She found her in the slum with guilt like dust on every surface. Together they went to the police station. Ning looked up and saw 2 women walking towards her from opposite ends of a long room. She stood. She did not know who to touch first. She let them both touch her. Bill arrived a few minutes later with a blanket and a bottle of water and the kind of silence that warms a person more than talk. Back at the mission, the old rules applied with new gentleness. No questions before food, no decisions before sleep. A doctor came as quietly as a well-behaved visitor. The days made their little staircase, and Ning climbed it one small step at a time. Nights did what nights sometimes do. They opened old corridors and asked her to walk them again. She learned how to turn on a light before the dream had finished. She learned that waking someone and saying your name out loud is a way to come home. Dao visited and cried, not to be forgiven, only to be seen. She spoke of a mistake that had been 4 mistakes, standing on each other's shoulders. She spoke of tablets that made false sunshine and left storms when they went. Volunteers helped her find a place that taught the slow practice of stopping. She failed. She tried again. She failed less. She learned that sobriety is not a door, but a path. She did not try to take Ning away again. Love can be wrong for a long time. Sometimes it learns. Ning stayed at the mission until she turned 16. She grew into herself with the wary confidence of a person who knows both the worst and the best of people. The boys who came to help with painting and football learned quickly that jokes would only take them so far. The girls who came with stacks of donated books learned that Ning would borrow the thick ones and bring them back early. Bill took her to the hardware market once and explained the poetry of tools. Kate showed her how to write her name on official forms with careful letters that would stand up in a queue. On the morning of her 16th birthday, the children sang and clapped out of time. There was a cake with 3 candles, because 3 had been what they could find in the drawer. Kate gave her a small silver pendant on a thread. Bill gave her a pocket torch and said, with a seriousness that made her laugh, "That good light is not a metaphor." Ning looked around the courtyard at faces that reflected back pieces of her own. She felt a joy so clean it shocked her. Then, because life keeps its balance, she felt the old itch of the horizon and knew it was time to test the world again. That afternoon, she told Kate she wanted to live outside, to work, to pay rent, to prove that all the lessons had been for something. Kate listened the way she always did. She said yes in a sentence that included "stay near." She put a phone number on a card and wrote "call any hour" in careful block letters. Bill packed a small toolbox with a torch, a tape measure, a stubby screwdriver, and a pencil. He said every home begins with these. Dao came on the bus with a basket of sticky rice and grilled chicken wrapped in newspaper. She kissed her daughter's cheek and did not ask forgiveness with words. She asked it with patience. Ning stepped out of the gate the next morning while the mural flowers were still blue. She turned left because left felt lucky. She walked to a rental room up the road with thin walls and honest windows. She placed the pendant and the toolbox on the shelf and arranged them like a promise. Then she went out to find work in a city that presents itself as a test. Evenings at the club began, the work that would hold and bruise in equal measure. But that is the next part of the story. She slept that night with a pocket torch under her pillow, not because she was afraid, but because light within reach felt like a plan rather than a hope. You've been listening to Farang Stories. If you'd like more tales from Pattaya, Bangkok, and beyond, subscribe and share this episode.